Alrighty, think the live stream is all set up. I will go over to the National Weather Service map here. Alright, think we are good to go. This is going to be a live fire weather coverage going over the various areas in the United States that are currently under extreme fire danger. And you can tell by these pink colorings here in Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas. All these areas are under extreme fire danger. So we're going to be first going into the exact counties that are under the fire danger, what kind of conditions these counties have, and also some of the science behind fire danger. What makes fire danger or a red flag warning? What conditions have to line up where one little spark can turn into a massive wildfire? We've been seeing more and more of this over the last decade, so that's why if you don't know, I am a fire weather researcher at San Jose State. I am currently studying California wildfires, and I just know this problem is just going to continue to get worse and worse. So I like to do these little forecasts just so there's hopefully a little bit more awareness about where the fire danger currently is. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first place we are going to look at is going to be the El Paso, Texas region. So if you go to the National Weather Service map right here, it's this area. You can see there's the very western edge of Texas has what is called a red flag warning. And then the area around it has a fire weather watch. So if we actually click into this and look at the conditions going on in this region, you can see it is extremely hot. So basically for fire weather and fire danger, three things have to add up, and that's going to be the theme of this fire weather coverage. The three things that need to add up for a little spark to turn into a massive wildfire, the first, probably pretty intuitive, is extremely warm temperatures. That I feel like just makes pretty intuitive sense. The second one is low relative humidity. And by that, I just mean dry air and dry vegetation. If you've ever tried to make a fire before, if you are using a moist log, you can probably remember it was pretty hard to start that fire. You probably had to put a ton of newspaper, a ton of kindling underneath that log just to get it smoldering. Well, you probably know if you put a super dry log in the fire, all you have to do is hold the lighter to that for a couple of seconds and it just blows up. So that's why relative humidity matters. The moisture in the air and the moisture in vegetation really plays a big role in how fast a fire can spread once it has started. The third aspect, which even has more to do with fire spread, is the winds. Winds do a few things to help fire growth. One, they push in oxygen. Fires run on oxygen. They can't run if there's less than 16% oxygen. So what these winds do is, one, they push in oxygen, but more importantly, they can actually pick up a spark, a burning leaf, a burning twig, a burning branch, and they can basically toss it. They can throw that burning branch like a baseball and start another fire. Then that fire starts to spread because it's dry vegetation, it's warm temperatures, and it's windy. And then the winds can further pick up another spark and throw that one. And that is how a fire can just quickly get out of control and really get extremely hard to fight. So getting into El Paso, Texas, you can see we got 94 degrees in Las Cruces, 92 in Deming. Sorry if I'm saying these towns wrong. 93 in El Paso. And further into Texas, we got Fort Hancock, 95 degrees. So these are going to be the areas where you're really going to have to watch out. When there is a red flag warning, the National Weather Service really encourages just extreme fire caution. Don't make a campfire. And actually, the weird one, I just found this out about a month ago. One of the major reasons all these giant fires start is actually chains hanging off of vehicles. Now, that might sound super weird at first, but it actually makes sense if you think about it. If you have a chain hanging off of a vehicle, as you drive, that can create sparks on the ground. Now, all it takes is one of those sparks to hit all that dry grass that you always see along the highway. One of those sparks hits that dry grass, boom, you got yourself a fire. The good news for El Paso, Texas is it says southwest winds to 10 miles per hour. Now, when it comes to extreme fire danger, this is actually pretty encouraging. 10 miles per hour is not very much. And if we go to the surface map, you can actually see where these winds are coming from. So it's partly because of this low that's over Arizona. Lows, in case you didn't know, have a counterclockwise motion of wind. So on the right side of the low, you have some of this wind pushing in from Mexico. There's also a low sitting up all the way up into South Dakota. You can see that's actually pulling some of these winds in too. But luckily, Texas is pretty far away from that one. And that's the majority of what's pulling these winds in. So you can see if we zoom in here, the winds don't actually look all that crazy in this area. So that is one kind of silver lining when it comes to the fire danger in El Paso, Texas. But you can see temperatures much above normal. And that's one of the key components to fire weather, if not the principal component. If it's extremely warm, well, you're just gonna have some pretty bad fire danger, because that also is gonna dry out the vegetation and dry out the air more. You know, I've never actually clicked on one of these. Let's see. Oh, it gives a nice full forecast. So that's pretty cool. If you wanna, I'm not gonna read this whole thing because I'm sure people will click right away if I start just reading something. But that is an option. If you go to the National Weather Service website, click on this little area here, and then you can click and read that whole forecast. All right, the next one let's look at. So that was El Paso. Basically, the big story there is excessive heat warning. The temperatures are extremely warm, and that's the big story for El Paso. Winds, not that bad. Relative humidity is low, but not extreme. Now, the next one we're going to look at is North Platte, Nebraska. So if you come back to this map that shows all the warnings, I guess one other thing to note, there is a flash flood warning in the northeast. There's a low pressure that brought a ton of severe weather to Oklahoma earlier in the week. There was softball-sized hail, hurricane-force winds, and that has now worked its way up into the northeast. And it's some really heavy rainfall rates, some severe thunderstorms, and that's why they have a flash flood threat up there. Wow, that's a little bit of a tongue twister right there. So North Platte is this area here in Nebraska. So if we come to this map, the key feature that they're talking about for North Platte area for El Paso is the excessive heat warning and the high temperatures. For North Platte, the big problem is the low relative humidities. You can see if you look at some of the counties around here, Grant 14% relative humidity, Rushville 18%, Ellsworth 16%. Oh, we got a 13 in Oshkosh. It's kind of a fun county to say. So whenever you see relative humidities in the teens, that's when you can get some extreme fire danger. It looks like Oshkosh has the lowest relative humidity, unless I'm missing something. If you see something I'm missing, say it in the chat and I'll try to bring it up as I go through this forecast. So again, when you have low relative humidities, that means the air is extremely dry. That means the vegetation is going to be extremely dry. And that means it's just going to be a lot easier to start a fire. For example, going back to that chain example, dragging off of a truck, if that chain is dragging off the back of a truck and it makes some sparks on the freeway and some of those sparks go into some grass, if that grass is super damp and moist, it might not even start even a small fire. If that grass is extremely dry, and it would be if you have these 13% relative humidities in the air above it, if that grass is dry, one little spark can make a massive fire. And then that is when, well, it can make a little fire, and then that's when the winds get involved. So it says southerly winds 15 to 25 mile per hour with gusts to 30 miles per hour. Now that is pretty extreme wind behavior. So if that little chain makes a little spark that makes a little fire, all of a sudden these winds start picking up little pieces of that grass that are on fire, and dropping it 10 yards away, 50 yards away, and all of a sudden you have a massive blaze that is out of control and hard to fight. And you see, they even say it on this graphic. Any fires that occur may spread rapidly and be difficult to control. It also creates a lot of danger for firefighters because if a fire is able to spread super fast, it's a lot harder to fight. Now, I will show my ignorance there. I am not a firefighter. I am a fire weather researcher, so if you've been watching for the last 10 minutes, you probably recognize that I'm really into the science behind this stuff. That's what I like to look at, the temperatures, the humidities, the wind, and really think about the weather aspect. I'm currently taking a course that is going to teach me a lot more about the firefighting aspect and hopefully get a few certificates when it comes to just knowing some of the key strategies when fighting fire. I'll be the first to admit I'm not brave enough to be one of those amazing firefighters that goes out and fights these blazes, but hopefully some of my research that I do can help those firefighters create better strategy for going against these kind of blazes. So this is pretty telling as well. So the big weather story, they have low relative humidities, extreme wind gusts. That is 2 boxes that are already being checked when it comes to extreme fire danger. Again, it's temperature, humidity, winds. That's what makes extreme fire danger. And you can see they also have extremely warm temperatures and sunny conditions. You see North Platte, 83 and sunny. Valentine, 85 and sunny. Imperial, 89 and sunny. So this is an area, North Platte, Nebraska, and the counties surrounding this whole area. This is probably the area that I think is at the most extreme threat for wildfire today. And the main reason for that is they're checking every single box. You see, they got relative humidities in the teens, they got winds 20 to 30 miles per hour, and then they have temperatures in the mid to high 80s. That's some extreme fire danger right there. Let's check out the extended outlook. So Saturday you got some lightning. The extreme fire danger is today, Friday. And hopefully if a fire does start, then this little storm right here can come in with some rain and quickly put it out. The thing you don't want though is for lightning to actually spark one of these fires, and then because the vegetation's already dried out, then that's a whole nother issue you got to start worrying about. So that is the outlook for North Platte, Nebraska, and the other areas around central to western Nebraska. There is extreme fire threat there, and again, the key aspects, they have dry conditions, they have 20 to 30 mile per hour winds, and they have temperatures in the mid to high 80s. All of those are a perfect recipe for extreme fire danger. Now the next place we're going to look at is Goodland, Kansas. Now, Goodland, if you don't know, is this northwestern part of Kansas. And you can see the counties around it, and this threat actually goes into Colorado as well. And it's all because if we go back to this surface map, remember I showed you this low earlier? Well, that low is right above South Dakota and Nebraska. And what that's doing, you can actually see it perfectly on this map. It is just creating very strong winds that are pulling into this low. I'll try not to get too sciencey, but for those of you who don't know, wind goes from high to low pressure. I like to think of it as, if air is really high pressure, it is a lot more stretched out, and then low pressure will kind of compress down. So I just imagine 2 columns of air. One is really tall, and one is really short. So if you were to put a tray on those 2 columns of air, you can imagine the tray would be angled down from the high pressure to the low pressure, and then if you were to pour some water on the top of that tray, it would flow right down to the lower pressure. And the same thing happens with wind and pressure in the atmosphere. You can see the wind is just being sucked right into this low pressure, and that's why we're getting these extreme winds over Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado. And you can see the temperatures are also extremely warm in this area. When you get these red temperatures, that indicates that you're in the high 70s, mid 80s, high 80s. And one other interesting thing, you can see that if you follow the path of this wind far enough, you can see it's actually bringing in this extremely warm air from Mexico and Texas, where it's in the 90s. So that's what's pushing this warm air all the way up into Nebraska and Kansas, creating this fire danger. So getting back to Kansas, that was a little bit of a tangent there, but again, I'm a fire weather researcher. I love the science aspect of it. So I'm going to show you what counties are under fire danger, but I'm also going to explain why. So right now we're going to be looking at northwestern Kansas. So if we click in there, that one's North Platte, Nebraska, and looking at Goodland, Kansas. So we got Goodland, Oakland, Hill City, Tribune. This is northwestern Kansas that we're looking at right now, and you can see red flag warning. And basically what that means, it's hazardous fire weather conditions. The temperatures, again, being pushed in from where Texas and Mexico, where it's 90 to 95 degrees, all that warm air is being pushed into this area. Remember earlier I was saying for North Platte, when you get relative humidities in the teens, that's when vegetation can get extremely dried out, and any spark that hits a blade of grass can just turn into a blaze. Well, unfortunately, that exact same problem is happening for northwestern Kansas. They have relative humidities in the 10 to 20% range. So they're in the teens as well. So that's extremely dry. When you mix that dry air with mid to upper 80s and south-southwest winds 15 to 20 miles per hour with some gusts 25 to 35 miles per hour, that's just going to create extreme fire danger. I would say, really, when I said earlier that North Platte has the bulk of the fire danger, and that's probably the key area to look for when it comes to fire danger right now, I'm going to throw Goodland, Kansas, and the rest of northwestern Kansas into that category as well. If you're in the mid to upper 80s, relative humidity in the teens, and wind gusts 25 to 35 miles per hour, any little spark can turn into the massive blaze that you saw in the thumbnail of this video in just a second. In case you were curious, the photo for that thumbnail, I took that photo in Utah. I went to a prescribed fire with the San Jose State Fire Weather Research Lab and the U.S. Forest Service, and it was an area that had to be burned anyway because they were trying to bring back the aspens in that area, and a non-native species had just taken over that mountain, and they basically wanted to get rid of the non-native species, light a giant fire, and then aspens, which are they're a lot more evolved for places with extreme fire behavior. The goal is burn out all the non-native species, and then aspen, which like fire, would come back and be restored to their natural environment. So I was lucky enough to go with the San Jose State Fire Weather Research Lab to see this prescribed burn, and it was incredible. In case you want to see the video, I took a time-lapse video of what this blaze looked like. It starts as just, a tiny little smoke column, and then within about an hour, it had turned into this giant plume of just 100-foot flames with a giant plume of smoke going up 3 miles into the atmosphere. And it was burning so hot. Again, if you've ever boiled water on the stove, you know that hot air rises out of the boiling water. It was doing that so fast that so much air was rushing out from above these flames that a ton of other air started rushing in to replace the air that was rising. Now, when it did that, it started to basically turn into a giant smoke plume tornado. I'm going to use that word lightly because I think firenado is very overused when people talk about wildfire and media coverage. But literally, this plume of smoke 3 miles high started rotating for about 45 minutes, and it was incredible to watch. So again, if you want to see the time-lapse video of that, you can check out my channel where I have that in the fire weather section and the wild weather section. One of the coolest days of my entire life, and really the thing that sparked my interest into fire weather. I originally got into fire weather because I live in California, and, you know, multiple seasons, multiple years, you couldn't even see the sky because there'd be so much smoke and ash in the air. So I figured, you know what? I know I want to go into weather. If I want to help out California and hopefully try to be part of the solution to this problem, maybe I should go study fire weather at San Jose State, which has the best fire weather program in the country. That was a bit of a tangent. Getting back to Goodland, northwestern Kansas. Again, final thing, if you want to see that crazy video of the fire plume, you can check that out on my channel in the fire weather and wild weather sections. All right, getting back to the wildfire coverage. Currently, I checked the incidents. There are no wildfires currently going. There was one on April 20th in kind of central to northwestern Texas, but that one is about 89% contained. It only burned about 25,000 acres. So luckily that's not a big threat, and there's currently no massive fires going on. But with all the fire weather that we have, there's certainly some areas we have to watch. So looking at this, again, mid to upper 80s, relative humidities in the teens with gusts 25 to 35 miles per hour, where the entire tri-state area. And it basically, this red flag warning goes from 11 to 8 p.m. And outdoor burning is not advised. I feel like that is pretty self-explanatory. And if you can feel the air is that dry, it's that windy, and it's that warm, I mean, come on, just don't start a campfire. But again, getting back to that feature that actually starts a ton of fires, dragging chains on the back of vehicles. Who would have thought? I just found that out like a month ago, and the reason I brought it up multiple times is because it's one of the key things that starts these wildfires, and you'd never really think about it, but it makes sense. Driving on the freeway makes a little spark, hits some dry grass, boom, you got a wildfire. So let's look at the severe weather outlook. There's actually more going on for this area as well. They got fire danger today going till 8 p.m. And then, right when you think that's not enough, they're going to have a massive storm coming in with 65 mile per hour winds and quarter size hail. That's hail big enough to put a dent in your car. So this whole area just can't even catch a break. Fire danger today, 65 mile per hour winds and hail tomorrow. So that's Saturday. It is currently Thursday. So that's something to look out for in the 5-day forecast. You can see red flag warning today. I like this graphic. This just kind of shows it perfectly. Everything you need to know. High 80, 90 degrees. Red flag warning issued. We got wind gusts and dry air as well. Friday, luckily it eases up a little bit. It eases up. You see that the temperatures aren't easing up. They're actually getting warmer. But I bet if we go here, this low is going to move off by tomorrow. Yeah, by tomorrow you can see this low has moved all the way up north of North Dakota. Wow, that takes a very north path. And you can see the winds in this area aren't as extreme because that low moved out of the area. You can see it's still extremely warm though. Let's go to like 2 to 5 p.m. You can see very, very warm in this area. Colby, 82 degrees. St. Francis, 84. But luckily, you see the winds here. They don't look that extreme. This is, again, tomorrow, though. Right now, you got the warm weather and the extreme winds and the dry temperatures. So getting back, you see Friday, the winds ease up a little bit, so the fire danger eases up a little bit. Saturday, there's no fire danger because the storm comes in, a couple of PM thunderstorms would have some lightning, 65 miles per hour. To put that into context, you categorize a hurricane at 74 miles per hour. So that's almost hurricane force winds and hail the size of quarters. Man, this area can't catch a break. They go from red flag warning to a severe thunderstorm to fire weather conditions again. So this is really an area that has a lot going on. And, oh, this map is pretty cool. This isn't technically fire weather, but I'm going to say it anyway because weather's cool and this is part of the forecast. So April observed precipitation in this area. You can see not very much. That's showing less than 1/10 of an inch throughout much of this area. Rainfall forecast through Sunday morning. So associated with this big storm that's going to be coming in on Saturday. With that big storm coming in on Saturday, you could, I think it says it right down here. Yeah, there it is. Rainfall amounts through Sunday morning may exceed what we've seen for the whole month of April. So this is going to be a big storm. Almost hurricane force winds, quarter-sized hail, and exceeding your rainfall for the entire month of April. Big story. But again, just to summarize the fire danger in this area, extreme fire danger. This is northwestern Kansas, one of the largest fire danger spots in this forecast. They've got temperatures in the mid to upper 80s, humidities in the teens, and gusts 25 to 35 miles per hour. Any tiny fire that starts can turn into a huge blaze in no time. So why am I saying this? Who cares, right? Well, who cares is if you live in this area, I believe 95% of fires are started because of people. So if you are one of the probably 5 people watching this forecast right now, if even 5, I can't see how many people are viewing, but I'm sure it's probably around that, if not 0. If you're one of the 5 people watching and happen to live in northwestern Kansas, please call at least 2 people, tell them some of the stuff you've learned here, and talk about how you're not going to be doing campfires outside, get the chains off your vehicles, or anything else you can imagine could lead to starting a fire. Call 2 people and then ask them to call 2 people as well. Hopefully, it makes a little chain reaction. Kind of went for the pun on the word chain there. Sorry about that. All right, next one we're going to be talking about is Colorado. Wow, look at that smoke plume photo. That is pretty awesome. So Colorado, part of this fire danger as well. So we were just talking about this area of Colorado. Now we're going to be going into Grand Junction. Grand Junction, I believe, is this area right here. Let's see. Yeah, that's the one we're talking about right now. So getting back to Grand Junction, Colorado, also a red flag warning today. So we've already talked about the red flag warnings in Nebraska and Kansas. Now we're working our way into Grand Junction, Colorado. And again, on the map, it is this area of southwestern Colorado. Let's first check it out on the map, because I love this map. It's always fun to look at. All right, if we click through here, you can see that there's actually a high pressure sitting right here. So typically around a high pressure, the winds aren't going to be that extreme. And that would be good for fire danger because, extreme winds are one of the key things that spread fires. But you do see that there is very warm air that has found its way into this region. And there are some winds coming in, not a whole lot. Right where you see the high pressure, you see more mild temperatures and almost no winds. Right here, though, you see you're in the mid to high 70s, maybe even 80s in some places. So getting back to this map that tells the nice weather story, you can see the surface map did not lie when you see that warm air sneaking in there. This shows it's the warmest day of the year so far, and this is the western slope of the Rockies. It's low humidity, so we got warmest day of the year. That's checking one of the boxes for fire danger. The next box is humidity, and we got it. Low humidity. So checking the first 2 boxes, warm temperatures, low humidity. The last thing you need is extreme winds. Oh, check that out. We got it. Gusty winds over 25 miles per hour. And that's actually a little bit surprising given this map right here. You see the winds don't look crazy. But if we zoom out a little bit farther, you can see you do have these winds coming in through Southern California and Arizona, and some of that is sneaking its way into this area of Colorado. It's a shame this high couldn't just expand out a little bit farther, because then you can see the more mild temperatures and lesser winds would be over the area. As it turns out, though, that's not the case. We got warmest day of the year, low humidity, gusty winds over 25 miles per hour. And what happens when you have warm temperatures and low humidity? Well, you get dry fuels. I'll go back to that little story I was talking about earlier. I doubt anybody who was listening at the very beginning of this video is still watching now, so I'm going to just say the same little analogy again. The reason warm temperatures and low relative humidities are so important and crucial for fire danger is really, the way I think about it, is if you're just trying to start a fire in your own home. If you have a damp, moist log and you put it in your fireplace, what's going to happen? It's going to be pretty hard to start that fire. You're going to have to put probably an entire newspaper underneath it, maybe even put a little bit of gasoline on the log. I'm not condoning that, but I've done it. And then with all of that, you might be able to get the log to just smolder a little bit. On the flip side, if you have an extremely dry log that's been sitting out all summer and you put that in your fireplace, I don't know why you're lighting a fire in summer, but let's go with it. You put that dry log in your fireplace, all you probably have to do is hold a barbecue lighter to that for about, 10 to 15 seconds, and all of a sudden the entire log is on fire, and you got the thing going. Probably don't even need any kindling or newspaper, because that's how much dry fuels matter. So when you get warm temperatures, it dries out the atmosphere, you get low humidity, and then, since the atmosphere is dry and warm, then the vegetation below it is going to get dry and warm. And then it's going to be able to light on fire just like that dry log that you put in your fireplace. So basically, this says exactly what I just said in a nutshell. Conditions will become favorable for rapid ignition, growth, and spread of fires. So I kind of talked about the rapid ignition part based on how much easier it is to start a fire when your vegetation is dry or your log is dry. When it comes to the growth and spread of fires, that has a lot to do with the wind aspect. So the temperature and humidity has a big aspect in starting the fire, and then how easy it is to continue to start fires. And note, I gave you a little sneak peek there, continue to start fires. And by that I mean, when these gusty winds come in, what they can actually do is pick up a leaf, a twig, a branch. They can pick something up that's on fire, throw it 25 yards, 50 yards, 100 yards, in some cases miles downwind, and then all of a sudden you've got another fire. And then that expands out because the temperatures are warm, the vegetation's dry. All of a sudden you have another major fire. And then the winds pick up twigs from that and they blow it somewhere else. And all of a sudden you have a massive blaze that is out of control. So this is going into the counties. Affected areas include Montrose, Nucla, Cortez, Durango, and Pagosa Springs from noon to 8 p.m. Thursday. So it's the exact same timing as the fire danger that we saw in Kansas and Nebraska. It's really noon today to 8 p.m. So that is pretty much all I want to say about Grand Junction, Colorado. The last one we are going to look at is, actually not the last one we're going to look at. Sorry. Last one we're going to look at is Pueblo, Colorado. That is this little area right here. So it's a lot of the same story as what I was just talking about for southwestern Colorado. You got this warm air pushing its way in from Arizona and New Mexico, and you could see this one little strip that is just building into Colorado right over Alamosa, Hooper, Center, Monte Vista. You can see the temperatures are pretty warm in this area. Let's see, that is about the warmest it gets. 79 degrees in Alamosa. That's plenty warm, and it's all you really need to start a fire. You can see that last map didn't really even do it justice. This one shows it a lot better. Record to near record highs. So let's look at Pueblo. Let's see if we can find it on the map. It's kind of like a Where's Waldo right here. Pueblo, Thursday's high temperature, 92 degrees. 92 degrees in Pueblo. You can see the record was 93 in 1992. Let's see if we can find Colorado Springs on the map. Can you find it before I can? Right there, 85 degrees. The record was 87 in 1992. Wow, warm year. 87 in 1992. The forecast high for today is 85 degrees. Looking at Alamosa, that was the one that showed up on this map. Alamosa, 79 in 1981. That was the previous record. Let's see if we can find it on the map. Right there, 81 degrees, breaking the record. Let's see, that's the only one that is actually breaking the record. It'll be interesting to see if that has actually happened. So, you got warm air. And I've been saying it over and over again. Warm air is arguably the most important factor for fire danger. And the winds don't actually look all that extreme in this area. I'm going to say that's probably around 15 mile per hour wind gusts, which is still pretty significant. And when the temperatures are this warm, you can bet your bottom dollar that the relative humidities are going to be pretty low. So again, another area of high fire danger in San Luis Valley. So I think it'd be helpful just to do a quick summary of the different places we looked at. El Paso, Texas. The big story in El Paso is the excessive heat warning. Warming. Warning and warning. I guess we'll say it that way. So that's this area right here in western Texas. And the big story they have is the excessive heat warning. You can see 94 degrees, 93 degrees, 92 degrees. Well, I guess that's technically New Mexico. And right here, 95 degrees in Fort Hancock. That's where Texas is. And so that's the key aspect for them, warm temperatures. When we go into North Platte, the key part of the weather story was the low relative humidity in the teens in numerous places like Oshkosh, and they also have the very gusty winds, 25 to 30 miles per hour. When we go into Goodland, Kansas, this is arguably the highest fire danger. They got temperatures in the mid to upper 80s, relative humidity in the teens, and winds 25, 35 miles per hour. So any little spark that starts could turn into a blaze in no time. In Grand Junction, Colorado, with a nice photo of the amazing fire plume right there, probably shouldn't say amazing, I'll say wild. That's another area of extreme fire danger. We got warm temperatures, low relative humidity, and gusty winds. A little less severe when it comes to winds and humidities, but very severe when it comes to temperature is the area around Pueblo, Colorado, breaking record highs. So really all the places I'm showing you, if you've been watching, the same trend really keeps showing up in each of these locations. They have warm temperatures, low relative humidities, and gusty winds. That makes it easy for fires to start, and then even easier for them to spread. So if you live in any of these areas, I encourage you, don't be starting any campfires outside or anything else of that nature. And if you're one of the few people to have watched this video and you live in these areas, or perhaps you know somebody who lives in these areas, you'll be able to find this video on my channel page. It's at Holt Hanley Weather, and I encourage you to send it to them because 95% of fires start because of humans. That sounds bleak and negative and kind of sad, but it's actually kind of a positive thing to think about because all we have to do is spread awareness of fire danger, like I'm trying to do now, and we could take out 95% of fires that start. If people are the problem, people can also be the solution. And I think that's the note I'm going to leave this at. If you enjoyed this video, you can subscribe to my channel, and if you're one of the few people to watch, thanks for watching.